Hi, welcome to Š-věÉŠ Financial Engineering video 34B. I'm Nick Ray-Ball. It's the 11th of January 2020. This is an update to video 34, and I'm going to quickly read 3 pages from the summary, the 64 reasons why summary, and then we're going to go into the spreadsheet. Okay, so let's go. It says to our right, because it's supposed to be in a magazine, but actually we're looking at it now, so it's going to be below. So below we see 2 illustrations of Š-věÉŠ inspired by Kate Raworth and Donella Meadows. The power comes from the monopoly effect E, where if E equals 100, the network of businesses is exclusively buying and selling within the network. Right now, companies like SpaceX and Virgin Orbit essentially operate with an E of 90%. So let's just go down and have a look at these graphics. Here's the first one. And we can see we've got a bath full of water, 80 gallons, and 80 gallons of that would flow out the plug hole, the drain. But what we've done is we've recycled 90% of it. Okay, so I'm just going to go through these, what the Š-věÉŠ equation is. R is for revenue, how much money is added to the system. We can see R here, it's coming in. It is a combination of investment, sales, exports, and aids that the network city receives within a year. E is recycle efficiency. In this case, E equals 90%. So 90% of the money that would have escaped down the drain is captured, conserved, and returned to the network. And we see that here. The outflow is not in proportion to the inflow. The outflow is actually 10 times the size of what it should be. Right, S is for spin, the number of times the system completely recycles. In the illustration above, we see this only once. So spin is 1, written as S1. And we have the little accents above the R, E, and S, just so as we can see them when I'm adding them into the narrative. Okay, S is for savings, the amount of cash flow left after the last spin in a year, which carries over as a form of revenue called savings the following year. Okay, so let's go down and have a look at that savings, the spin. But what we've done now is we're seeing the money trail out. It's spinning one time. It's going back to many businesses within the network, and essentially the cash flow is double, or well, close to double. We have the original 8 billion here. 90% of that is recycled, so that's 7.2 billion, and that comes in there. So the actual amount of cash flow or water in the bath is 15.2 billion. Okay, 10% is lost. 10% of S and R is lost as spillage. Let's see. Now we're gonna look at how the S. Okay, let's just do it. The S in Š-věÉŠ Financial Engineering. It's a very, very difficult equation to say when you have a slight lisp. Dear. S is for spin, the number of times this system completely recycles. In the last illustration, we saw this only once, so spin is 1, S1. In the illustrations below, we see spin 2 and spin 3. The trick is to apply spin so the network spends all its cash flow more than once a year. Very, very simple. Difficult to argue with as well. Starting with 8 billion in savings and revenue and a recycle efficiency of 90%. Each company spends 90% of its cash flow on labor, parts, goods, and services from other companies in the network, evenly spread out. So at the end, all the companies in the network have roughly 90% of the cash flow they started with. Critically, this happens in the first 7 months, January to July. Then in August 2025, so previous year was 2024, then in August 2025, we apply spin and spend the recycled 7.2 billion. Thus, the cash flow of the network in 2025 increased from 8 billion to 15.2 billion. Okay, and here's the little graphic, the first graphic, and we can see how it's working. January, February, March, April, May, June, money spent. When we spin it all around, August, September, October, November, December, spin it all around. But instead of the cash flow going back for another round, now that cash flow is going to 2026. That cash is in the banks. It's all there. Now it's just moving to 2026. And we can see below, in fact, what we see below is that happening a third time. So January, February, March, April, all the money is spent, spins around again. July, June, July, August, September, all that money is spent. 90%, 10% is lost. 10% is lost. Spins around again. October, November, December, spend all that money again. 10% lost again. And it spins for the last time, and that last spin is going to the next year, 2027. And we call this savings. The money that is saved, that isn't spent, that goes to the next year, is savings. So that's the beginning of the S-res equation. Savings plus revenue times efficiency times spin. Below, we start looking at the S-World spreadsheet. Move to history-free figures. These cash flow figures are critical and are found on the spreadsheet tab Š-ÞÉÉŠ V5 S-World History Free B. The most important tab within the spreadsheet. The best way to look at them is via the video I made, and this is the old video, video 34, which is good, but there's a few mistakes on it. But well, it's not mistakes. Things have been updated over the last year and a half since this was made, and I'm presenting those updates here. Here we go for the money. Okay, cash flow in year one. This isn't from what we've just seen. This is from the spreadsheet we're about to look at. As 5 billion, and then in the second year that increases because we're spinning it, so it happens twice a year. Plus, there's a little extra coming from other places, and then each year afterwards, I've recorded it, and we can see it ends up with a massive amount at the end. That said, that's including growth and global growth. So the only way to really look at the future is not at how much is being made, but how much of GDP is one making. And here we're seeing GDP of 1.07%. And this is for Malawi. So Malawi would in 2080 have 1.07% of GDP. What this buys is, well, it buys a lot, but specifically I've noted it's brought in it's created 10 million luxury homes. Yeah, luxury homes. This isn't social housing the way it's normally done. These are all luxury homes. As long as they are net zero, we want everything as good as it can possibly be. Right, so let's go to the spreadsheet. Let's see how that works. Okay, briefly, and note it's that tab. This is the tab. Š-ÞÉÉŠ V5, S-World History Free B. Okay, a little bit of a navigate around here first. Here we can see global growth. If I change this percentage to 105, it changes everything across the whole spreadsheet. Same for Malawi growth, same for Malawi growth in real estate. In general, I've put global growth at 2.5% and Malawi growth at 5%, which is very much in line with how things are probably going to roll out. Okay, city-sized developments and suburbs, 1 billion a year. This is where 90% of all the money comes from. This 1 billion a year, and this will have been negotiated years before. You know, one of the first things to negotiate. Hey, anyone want to buy a suburb? I've put export 1 million each, which is a token figure. It's just there so as there's something there so as people could follow it and people could put in trades. History 2 had a lot of trade. This history, because I don't want any arguments. I don't want anyone to say, yeah, but what about those trade figures? You're not going to do that. So like yeah, there's no trade figures to worry about. One can question the real estate sales in Angel City 1, but one can also just remove them. 0 ash 0 0 0. Just going to undo that. One can remove them, and it only makes 10% difference to the entire system, that the entire future, the history. So aid figures as well. Now we're starting at 1 billion. We're going up to, I think, 2.5. There's 2 billion. There's 2 billion. And then it goes down again, and by 2032 there's no aid. So there's aid starting in 2024, ending 8 years later, I think. And it's a reasonable, you know, there's a lot more aid out there. There's trillions. Is there trillions? No, there's about 150 billion, I think, roughly in aid in the world. So it's not pushing the envelope in any way to think we were going to get 1 to 1.5, especially as that aid will use this system and can show the people that gave it to us, who donated it, that it has been used, it's been spun, and it's done a lot more good than it would do anywhere else. Okay, so that's a little brief. Now this is the important bit. This is the important bit. Right, so we got some initial aid coming in there. We got some revenue coming in. This is the important bit. Don't worry about where that's come from. Just worry about this 6.3 billion. Okay, so we've talked about the res system. This is how it works. 6.3 billion in there. You've got to times that by 90%. 10% goes, half of that 10% goes to labor in US dollars. The other half goes to buying essential things that we can't get locally. So 6.3 billion times 90% is 5.6 billion, and that is what is left, because all of the businesses buy from each other, just like the classic plumb pipe series. It just goes round and round and round. So this 6 has gone round once, and the businesses collectively still have 5.6 billion in their bank account. Okay, that was spent. 90% of it went to other businesses in the same network. The Serena Equilibrium organized that, so everybody pretty much ended it up with about 90% of what they started with. Okay, that's year 1. And the only things to note here is the cash flow remaining gets turned into savings because it can be used the next year. Of course, that money's in the bank. The fact that it's not being spent on anything, it will still be there the next year. It only gets spent more than once a year when we spin it. Okay, so let's have a look at that spin. So first of all, correction, this is 5.6, and it should have actually been this 6.3. And you'll notice there are some mistakes where it would end up being more money. We would make more money. But I'm not going to correct it because it changes all the figures for everything. And as long as we're making more money than I'm predicting, that's not a problem. If we're making less money than I'm predicting, that's a problem. So this 5.6 should be 6.3. We're moving on from that. CFE, cash flow variable. This is my cosmological constant, 50%. We're thinking of cash flow. How much cash flow? How much GDP is that? 50%. That's what we're saying for now. Others, jump in, help me on that. Okay, so that 5.6, which should be 6.3, but anyway, it's 5.6. No, now it's spinning to the next year. Yes, it is the 5.6. Yes, the 5.6 is the spin. 6.3 is the cash flows. Okay, so this is savings, and now we're moving it over we're going to the next year. You see now we go 25. That's how it works. 24, 25, going down, go down, go down. And this cash flow returns here. See that LCR, Law of Conservation of Revenue. Now we just call it savings, but whatever. That's where that's recorded. Now, other factors. Let's have a look at it. So we've got one city installment, 1 billion or just over. We've got token trade. We've got real estate from Angel City 1 that we can throw away if we want. We don't have to include this figure. It's not necessary. 1.5 from aid. That is, it's very realistic, so we could just keep that there. And that totals up to this figure here. Grand total, 8.56 billion. Thus, this 8.5, not thus. This is what happens. That gets copied up to here. Okay, this is just a copy of this. And now we go again. Sorry for all this stuff down here. I've been working out this and that for salary, all sorts of things. Anyway, we're not worrying about this stuff below for now. What we're worrying about is this. Now we're going to spin. Okay, so we're starting with 8.5. We have an E of 91. That brings us a cash flow of 7.8, basically 7.8 billion. So this 8.5 has been spent, but 91% of it was spent in companies in the same network. So that network has 91% of 8.5 in cash in its central bank. It's sitting there. It's ready to go. But what we're doing now, look here. The first spin is the first 191 days. So that was spent by the 11th of July. So on the 12th of July, the entire network of businesses has 7.7 billion that it can spend again. And that goes here. It goes onto the second line. We can see that here. And again, it's spun with an E of 91%, so 9% is lost. And that's the cash flow. So now, when we go down, that's our cash flow. Again, it should be more because it should have this figure here. But, when I make a mistake and it makes too much money, we're not worried about that. Okay, so again, that's 50% of that might be GDP. 18.75. That's there for government's allocation, and 25% for Labour. Again, this again, at the end of the year, that's 7.96. Where is that? Let's have a look at it. It's here. This figure here is in the company at the end of the year, in the company's central bank, in the central bank that is assigned to all of these companies. So this is savings, and it goes to what's going on? It goes to the next year. Again, it goes in here, and again we add trade, token figures, real estate can be thrown away. Aid gone up to 2 billion, and another installment for the city or suburb, and all that adds up to this figure here, and this figure here again starts at the beginning of the rest calculator, or the Š-ᾧÉŠ calculator. Now we've got free spins. Okay, we should have a good feel for it now. That 10.5 is times by 92%. E has gone up to 92%. It makes that cash flow. It spends it by the 12th of May. From the 13th of May on, it has 9.7 cash flow in its bank. It then spends that again with an E of 92, creating this amount of cash flow. So now in this year we've got this is spent by the 11th of September. We put it down there again. It goes across. It's there. Now we're counting 1, 2, 3. Possibly we should be counting these 1, 2, 3, but as I've said, if I make a mistake in it, it's in my favor. I'm not worried about that. Okay, so that adds up to 26, and we can start to see now. Let's go back to this. Here's our first year. Here's our second. This is the year we're looking at now, 26. And you can see how it works. We add spins. We add one spin each year up until the 32nd year. And each time we're increasing the cash flow. We're increasing the money supply. Okay, we're going to have a... Just simply now, there we go. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. And it goes to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just carries on doing the same thing. It adds a spin. But the more spins you have, the higher E is. And, you know, probably the biggest, you know, question mark to what's happening here is it possible to get that E as high as we are doing? The spins, I think we can do it. I think we can spin it as many times as we want. Given time, you know, in this version, when we get to 20 spins, we've had 20 years to get to that spin and to get to that E. But yeah, people can rightly say, I'm not sure you can get an E. Not necessarily. I think 94 is okay, but when we start going down, let's just zoom down. Where are we now? 2048, 99.5. The E. You know. That you know, one could say, you know, it's very difficult to get past 97, you know, but that's why I need some programmers to help me make the as well DCA software, so we can just do this, plug it in, and work all these little questions out. Okay, we're going to go right to the bottom now. Just going to slightly go up. So 32 spins, cash flow, well, yeah, that's 8 trillion. Believe it or not, but the math works. So you have to believe it. It's a monopoly. It's a monopoly power, which would not necessarily be a good thing if we didn't have the 64 reasons why, and this whole thing is just to help the planet. You know, that's what it is. That's why I did it. Okay. Here we have some wildly different predictions of what Malawi will look like in 2080 in terms of its share of GDP, from 5% to 0.3, 0.6, no, 0.24 there. And this changes when one changes the global growth and the Malawi growth from 2.5% global and 5% Malawi to other amounts. Okay, here we see the percentage of global GDP, 1.07 in 2080, and we can see what that equals in GDP, but that's sort of irrelevant. What is useful to know is how many houses that builds, and we can see these figures here. Okay, the house you see to the right, you'll work out, if you need to, where that came from. And this is using 6.25% of cash flow or GDP. And here we have the same, but for water. And this one we work out. The trouble is the water plan is really, really troubled because there's no sea or ocean next to Malawi. So for water, making it via desalinization, we got to get an 80-mile pipeline through Mozambique or Tanzania. I always pronounce it wrong. So yeah, this water plans, you know, it would work better for someone who had didn't have to have that pipeline. But given that pipeline, water for 60 million people. Right, okay, so I'm going to leave it here. We've seen, I think, all we need to see. And yeah, get in touch. Cheers.